Yeah, let me go.
All right. From the notebook, writing, scraps, and scrapes. What do we have here? Right. Short story idea about joggers behind you at night, eventually revealed to be dog-faced. That's part of the Cthulhu-esque cycle. Working on another one. Bird monsters scream at night after passing two young girls. This happened to me. You turn around at the hideous shriek, and the girls are nowhere to be seen. What happened? They shapeshifted? They were victims of whatever screamed? The sound for a split second kind of sounded like one of the girls erupting in a jocund shriek because they had been laughing and sporting loudly as they passed me. It was eerie. Anyway, the experiment with time story, the narrator discusses the space-time worm theory of selfhood or non-selfhood, which he doesn't believe, but he wonders if it's insightful for sort of a trail, like the segment of time itself is preserved. Here's an excerpt from the working story of this chap, this unfortunate chap. Sometimes, he says, I like to sit there like any other, quote-unquote, human being, on a bench in George Square in what passes for spring in this cold country, dangerously languorous, sunshine burning one ear while cold embraces the other, seabirds laughing insanely overhead, flapping imperiously down among the moping pigeons to snatch viciously at crumbs. Afternoon sun, late afternoon, the colors are getting deeper, richer. I shouldn't be here right now. Time to go. Someplace remote from crowds where perhaps there meanders a loner, but I sit here in the sun, proximate to the aggregate congregations of elderly, very young, youth, and the rest. I sit here with them in their company, as if I'm one of them. I luxuriate in the warmth on one side of me, and it's dangerous to stay here. The hunger for light builds. It will reach a point of no abating, and I will feed, one way or another. Yes, it is downright stupid to sit here, and it is only by letting my contempt for this race grow that I can do it. Okay, later in the story, he lets it all happen. Or this is what could happen. He lets it all happen and he doesn't move, but full sunset colors never materialize. The sky is overcast. The hunger never initiates full light vampiric mode. The kill is not made. And he kicks himself for risking it because he doesn't want to become hunted. Now, another thought is there one scene of an afterward victim, the light-sucked result, hard to see until light seeps back in. So there's a missing person for weeks, a blot or a stain, on the edges of vision, unconsciously stepped around, avoided by people walking through the city as they encounter this on the pavement. And maybe a scene at the end of him sucking desperately, pathetically, repulsively. Now, here's another note. Elder God's chaos city described, evoking a certain hideous beauty. One asks, who is in this, is there beauty in absolutely everything, even hell? Is it inescapable? And another replies, yes, and ineradicable. But in hell, its beauty eternally twisted to sickening repulsiveness. It is the most painful, tragic kind of ugliness. And this might be connected to another story, this Daylight Monster story. Now back to the light vamp is, in terms of a victim. When other light, because the light of the victim's been sucked out, but when other light finally seeps in over like a fortnight, the recolored result is unspeakably wrong. Sometimes it's hard to say just how, but other times portions are off or wholly rearranged, and this is quite grotesque. They're identified only by fingerprints, though those also are often off, so they can't be identified. Some people think it's the work of like a gruesome body disfigurer, and they begin to write articles about the psychosis. And he himself, of course, knows they have it all wrong. Now, on the other hand, whole different story, Hellboy story, featuring a chap called Charlie Carter, pastor and pugilist, preacher and boxer. Did 2 years of undergraduate theology at an institution that was none too sure there was either Theos or Logia. He dropped it to become a low church pastor of an independent non-denominational church in the Midwest. A national fighting federation was run in their nearly 100-year-old school building. So there's a question here about how did he first meet Hellboy? What were the circumstances of becoming Hellboy's pastor and of starting the underground church for monsters? A god. I don't know what this is. A god of Mesopotamia descends to earth, and a god of Gehenna rises up to meet it in battle. The city looms around and shifts and vies for front row action. Interesting. I have no idea what that one's about, or what it connects to. You see, here's a note on the Ape Cat story, which is also the Hellboy and his pastor story, which is where the character Ape Cat comes for the song. But what do I have here? Climbing, leaping among city walls by night. Before the fight, that's what's happening before the fight between her and Charlie Carter, and then which is also before the fight between her and Hellboy. But anyway, also before that, Charlie Carter is coming out of a Bible study or a fight night at his church, not sure, maybe a different church in Chicago. Charlie is a provisional pacifist pugilist. Okay, have to work that one out. What was Hellboy doing just before this? He's investigating, I think. Start with Charlie. Yes, the story starts with Charlie versus Ape Cat, the fight in the alley almost. And then Hellboy steps in at the end of that. Okay, then the story backs up and shows each of the three reaching this point. So Ape Cat, Hellboy, and Charlie. Then it proceeds to Charlie and Hellboy after the fight. The story does. When they're conversing while they sort of clean up the mess they've made and do something with the carcass of Ape Cat, perhaps. And then finally, at the end of sort of the story, which is actually somewhere in the middle of it, it describes the sort of monumental fight scene between Hellboy and Ape Cat. Described in mythic, spiritually weighted prose a la O'Connor McCarthy. Well, we'll see. What kind of monster is Ape Cat? A mythical amalgamation and or lab experiment? Is Charlie Carter also a horror movie fanatic? We need to research fighting and hand-to-hand combat. Back to the light vamp. He takes a random bus out of the city. Oh, there you go.